Good evening. Welcome to our webinar. This is Dalia Al-Ghamdi. I'm a pharmacist in background, fellow ISMP, Institute for Safe Medication Practices, with a master's degree in healthcare policy and management. And you will be hearing today our presentation by Dr. Nuha Al-Mhaysin. She will speak about the change and in change management and healthcare. In this presentation, we will discuss, we will understand more the change management, how it helps the practice achieve the organizational goals with minimal resistance to change from care staff. Healthcare executive must build focused, structured change management plans to effectively guide personnel to achieve desired outcome. Dr. Nuha Al-Mhaysin is a consultant restorative dentist. She is the head of education and training in CQI-PS department in Ministry of Defense Health Services, and she is a team leader of innovation in Ministry of Defense Health Services, and she is a Harvard Medical School graduated with a master's degree in quality and patient safety, and she is a member of the scientific committee for SPRD, and Dr. Nuha Al-Mhaysin is motivated, and her participation in the quality department is noticed. And we will be starting the presentation with this session by Dr. Nuha Al-Mhaysin. Doctora.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dalia. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be with you and to present another lecture with the Patient Safety Center. Today, we'll talk about a topic that I think it's very interesting to everyone working in healthcare, particularly in the era of transformation and where all of the healthcare systems are going through multiple changes. So change is inevitable. However, let's learn together how to manage this change. So first of all, I'll ask a question that is why? Why do you think we need to learn about change management and healthcare? And of course, you can write in the chat if you have any comments. However, I'm going to take you through multiple reasons that I think would be convincing to you to let you understand or believe in the need for change management in healthcare. So first of all, I'm going to get an example from the NHS where they have a program for safer care for patients. And from that program, they try to cover multiple patient safety areas, focusing on many conditions such as VTE, pressure injury, urinary tract infection, and hospital fall. And from that, they saved lives and they saved also budget for the healthcare system. So all of those activities and initiatives done to improve patient safety are in a way or another type of changes. So let's understand and believe that healthcare system always going in different type of changes. And those changes in healthcare are not only changes to improve patient safety, particularly to improve patient safety. However, any change in the system can impact patient safety in a way or another. So this change can be changing in the culture, and we all know about the culture of safety survey that's measured by the Patient Safety Center and how every organization is trying to improve this culture of safety. Those changes that are targeting the culture are type of change that the healthcare organization trying to absorb and react to it. Also changing the organizational structure, canceling certain departments, opening and merging between different departments, maybe having a clusters in a healthcare system. All of those are type of changes that might impact the way we do things and might impact indirectly the patient care. Also, technological changes. Many healthcare systems are going for electronic health records. Any type of technological transformations, such as implementing a medical reconciliation form, a medical prescription, any type of technology can impact patient care. Also, changing the task and the ways we do the things, implementing of new form, new guideline, pathway, all of those are considered as type of changes. And remember that people always have their own reasons to resist the change and to want to prevent this change from happening. So there are 50 or more reasons for people to go against the change. Let's watch this video. It would show you how it's from the IHI, and it's to show you how is the link between leadership and healthcare. And if you are a healthcare provider, how do you think change management is related to your role, whether you are a leader, a manager, or a director of a department?
There are levels of expertise. The obvious one that we all receive during our clinical training is to be a true master expert physician or nurse or pharmacist. There's a step above that, though. These days, all care delivery happens at a team level. How do you effectively lead a team? It's not sufficient to be a master of the medicine. You also have to be able to effectively lead a group of highly trained professionals working together. It's not one set of eyes, it's 5 sets of eyes in that operating theater. It's not one set of hands caring for a patient. It's 20 sets of hands caring for a patient. Somebody needs to coordinate that. Somebody needs to pull the pieces together. Somebody needs to get that whole team on the same page, moving in the same direction, consistently, accurately. How do you drive effective change without understanding systems, without understanding the basic human psychology that allows people to interact together, not just to deliver good care, but to systematically improve under their professional goals? How do you understand the role of data, theory of knowledge? How do you understand variation within those data and appropriately classify and respond depending upon the nature of the underlying problem? We didn't get those things in our clinical training. It was focused on the human organism, health and disease, and ways that we could intervene to change a patient's future. There's a whole new level that distinguishes those who deliver effective care versus those who organize and lead an effective care delivery system.
So we've watched in this video how being a leader or a director in a healthcare indicates that we really need to know about change management, and it's really important to manage the change in addition to providing good care to the patients. So let's go through the outline of lecture today. First of all, I'll talk briefly about Deeming Theory and a few aspects of Deeming Theory and how it could relate quality and patient safety to change and change management. Next, we're going to define change and try to understand what's the difference between change and change management. Next, we will understand why do we need change management in general, why do we need it in any organization, and then what is the organizational culture and how it's really related to change management, and a brief about a few models of change management. So who's Deeming and what's Deeming Theory? Deeming Theory, it's a very well-known and famous theory, and it's called the theory of profound knowledge. And it's a fundamental improvement theory, and it's grounded in what they call a system thinking and based on the principles that each organization consists of interrelated processes and people that compose the system. So the system thinking theory, or the theory of profound knowledge, mainly is based that every system is composed of process and people. So let's look at it from 4 different perspectives, trying to understand what is the system of profound knowledge. First of all, the first area is to appreciate the system, and appreciating the system by understanding multiple theories of the system. We know that there is an input, process, and output. So there is a structure, process, and outcome. Also, we know the Swiss cheese model. So whenever there is a harm, it has to pass throughout the levels of the system to reach the patient. And also we can understand that the system is composed of multiple levels, including micro level of the system, meso level of the system, exo system, and then the macro big system that correlate those different systems together. Also, we have the theory of knowledge, and the theory of knowledge, the main principle of it, that the quality improvement or the improvement or any change in healthcare system is a continuous process. So we can't usually reach the target from the first cycle of improvement. It's a continuous cyclist repetition of improvement. Third is the psychology of change, and the psychology of change is the area whereby we will tackle the change management and the framework, and it's the area that we're going to cover in this lecture today. The fourth is about knowledge about variation. So understanding the variation, the special cause variation, the common cause variation is very important to understand the system of profound knowledge that Deeming has proposed. So what is change? Change is a movement out of a current state, so how we do things today, through a transition state and then reaching a future state and how things will be done in the future. So if you can see this lady with the gentleman standing on this side of the mountain and they're planning to go to the other side, they need to pass or bridge from the current status to the future, and to reach the future, they need to pass by a transition state. So the change is this type of movement. It happens all around us. It happens in home and community, at work. We can have personal changes. We can feel in the change in our daily life activity. It can be internally motivated or externally motivated. So for example, if one of your children is going through exams and you want to motivate them to study and get the highest grade in the class, you might externally motivate them. You might tell them, I'm going to give you a prize or a gift to change their way of dealing with their school and subjects and assignments. Also, it can be dramatic departure from what we know, or it can be minor or minor change through time. Also, change can be anticipated or unexpected. So change is not always a plan. Sometimes it's unexpected, like what happened during the COVID-19 outbreak. So COVID-19 outbreak was a major change that hit the whole world, not only the healthcare systems, and it was not very anticipated. It was kind of unexpected, and the people started to react to this change accordingly. So again, change is the transition or the movement from the current state, which is a red color, to a transition state, which is a yellow color, to a future state, which is a green safe state. Is the state whereby we want to reach or the organization want to get in. Let's have some examples of change. So some examples that I'm going to mention, and I would expect from you in the next slide to participate with us with some examples, is moving, for example, to an electronic system from manual. So many people, they don't want or they don't prefer to move to an electronic system from manual. However, sometimes moving to electronic system might improve the quality, it might improve the patient safety, or even minimize waste or minimize any other errors that might happen with the manual registration. Other example is expansion or a new department or services. Having a new department in the hospital, canceling other departments and function, changing the relation between the head of departments. So maybe, for example, one time the nursing administration is going to report to the assistant hospital director instead of reporting directly to the hospital director. Those type of changes might be considered a change that might impact the organization and might affect how the people do the work. Merging two organizations. So there are some organizations that merge together. After merging, that might be a new change because different policies will be implemented. Transformation is a type of major change, introducing a new equipment in a department or area. For example, a new IV pump is a type of change that needs training of the staff. They need to accept and know how to use it. Also, organization restructure, forming a new teams, committees, different reporting hierarchy is considered as a type of change. So now, Dr. Dalia.
This is an example of change. What are other examples of change?
So let's participate, please. We want your input. whereby you can participate with us of some examples of change that you can elaborate about it, and we will have 2 volunteers.
Yeah, and I will call the name of the 2 volunteers. So would you please raise your hand?
So today we want to hear the voice of the attendees. We want 2 participants. Yes, Dr. Dalia.
Cynthia Mohan, and I'll take Noura Ayed. Cynthia.
Yes, Cynthia. Can we unmute her, please?
Yeah, she is.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yes, Cynthia, we can hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please. Can you mention one example of change that comes to your mind?
Ma'am, many innovative ideas can be brought inside, ma'am.
Sorry?
Many innovative ideas can be brought inside.
Okay. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you, ma'am.
Noura?
Noura Ayed. Okay. Shall we take another name?
Yes, sure. We have, I think, Nasira. She's raising her hand, Dr. Dalia.
Yes. Nasira. Would you please unmute her? No, what's the problem? I don't know what's the issue.
Can we unmute Nasira, please, the panelist? If not, then we can go to the chat, and if anybody has a story to share, you can just type it in the chat, please. Good. Yes, we can hear you, Nasira. Go ahead.
Nasira.
Okay, Dalia. Is there any stories in the chat, or should we proceed?
In the chat, let me just check.
Okay, so I can read here from Hatem Al-Yami. He mentioned that the change happens to Saudi healthcare systems, to clusters. I think that's a wonderful example. Thank you so much, Hatem.
And there is one mentioned for change transformation to electronic medical record files by Noura Rasmi.
Wonderful, Noura. I do agree with you. Yes. So changing to a healthcare system electronic is really one type of the changes. Also, Riham is saying change in leadership, change from one job to another or position. Wonderful example, Khalid. That's a personal type of change. Shari is saying changes in the culture is the most challenges which facing us in this field. Totally agree with you, Sami. I'm Shari. Thank you so much. So yes, I do agree with you. Also, changes in the hospital strategy, Hiba, such as commitment curve change and change in the roles and responsibilities. So wonderful. I think everybody is grasping the idea and understanding what are really the types of change that we can go through. So what is change management? Now we could understand what change is. Let's try to understand what change management is. And what is the difference between change and change management? Change management is actually a structured approach to transitioning individuals, teams, and organizations from the current state that we put it in the red zone to the desired future state that we said is in the green zone to fulfill or implement the vision or the strategy. So vision and strategy is one of the areas that usually require changes. Change management is the structured approach for this type of transition. It's the organizational process aimed at empowering employees to accept and embrace changes in their current environment. So why do we need change management? Because it's about supporting the people through their individual transition. So going through this transition or change is not usually easy for the staff. And you would see what the consequences of this change could be. So to support those people, the employees that were working in the organization, those who form a huge part of the change and the success of the change, we have to do what's called change management. And change management is necessary because the organizational change is moving from an organizational current state to an organizational future state, ultimately would impact how the people do their jobs. And it might include all of the people working in the organization. So now we will have the first bull. Yes, Dr. Dalia.
Okay. Which one do you think is more difficult to manage? Technical? Just a second. Technical side or people side? And there will be a discussion regarding this answers.
So please, we have 776 participants. I wish to see the similar number on responding to the poll. So we want you to tell us which one do you think is more difficult to manage? Is it the technical side of the change or the people side of the change that we're talking about and we think it's going to be tackled really by change management? Yes, please, everyone participate in the first poll. Can we stop the poll, please, and check the results?
So it become a technical side, 21%, people side, 79%.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Dalia. So majority of the attendees who participated in the poll, they believe that the people side of the change is really the most difficult part to manage during any type of change. So let's look at the, again, to the graph that I have shown, the traffic light, the red, yellow, and green. And then let's see what two types of change that we have. So usually when we implement any type of change, we have the technical side of the change. And for the technical side, we usually design the process, we develop a new policy and procedure, we develop a structure, a hierarchy, and we start to deliver this type of change. So that's what we do usually in project management and the way we manage technical side of change. However, managing the people side of the change is the way we transform those people from the current state into the future state. And that by embracing the people, adopting the people, and making them really use this type of change and implement it. Because this change, if it's very technically successful and it's not implemented well by the people or embraced, then we will not get the results or the outcomes and the success that we expect to have. So let's go with our next poll. Which most common obstacles are experienced during major organizational change? So which one do you think is the most common obstacle experienced during the major organizational change?
Is it employee resistance or communication breakdown, cost exceeded budget, staff turnover, insufficient time for training.
So please, we want everyone to participate. Yes, select which one you think is the most common obstacle. Can we stop the poll, please, and get the results?
Okay, employee resistance, 41%. Communication breakdown, 19%. Cost exceeded budget, 12%. Staff turnover, 13%. Insufficient time for training, 15%.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Dalia. So most of the people who are attending with us today thinks that employee resistance is the most common obstacle that organizations might face during change. And for that, it indicates that we really need change management. So let's look, does really change initiatives fail? And let's look what McKinsey and Company have said. So 70% of change initiatives fail. And the two main reasons they think behind the failure of change programs are employee resistance, and second is lack of management support for the employee during the change or the transition from the current state to the future state. Harvard Business Review, they said that 66% of change initiatives fail to achieve their desired business outcomes. So if you are a senior leader, if you are an executive in a healthcare system, whenever you propose a change, believe it or not, 70% or 66% of change initiatives fail if you don't take in consideration the employee resistance and the change management. So based on the poll that we have done, let's look into the obstacles experienced during major organizational change. Employee resistance was the obstacle in 76% of the cases, while communication breakdown was in 72%. Insufficient time devoted to training was in 44% of the situations, and staff turnover during transition was 36%, and cost exceeded budget, where people always complain about costs and the budget required to change, was only related in 32%. So most of the obstacles were related to employee resistance. So why do you think people would resist the change? There are many reasons why people resist the change that were proposed in studies by Qatar. And the first one is the parochial self-interest. So people always, they think they are going to lose something with the change. So people think that the self-interest goes against the new proposed change. So for example, if you are asking me to do a new steps that's going to improve patient safety, I think those new steps might be more difficult for me to do. It's going to increase my working time. It's going to be an extra effort. So people always think that their self-interest might be against the new proposed change. Second is misunderstanding of the type of change and lack of trust. So people would think that this change might affect my salary, it might affect my position. So I don't trust the organization when they start to propose changes. So in that, we will explain the next slide, how we need to explain what type of change, and people would understand it to minimize the resistance. Third is different assessment of the situation. Sometimes we have different perspectives. So for example, the medical administration have different perspective from the nursing administration, different perspective from the supply department. So those different assessments of the situations and the way people look into things might result in resistance. Number 4 is low tolerance and inertia. So what happens when the organization is going through multiple changes? The people will start to have low tolerance to change, and they will have inertia. So they don't want to go to change anymore. I don't want to change. I'm happy with the current situation. So what are the change approaches that was proposed by John Qatar again? Because John Qatar is a Harvard Business School professor, and he made many researches on change management. So he proposed, first of all, education and communication. So proper education and communication is very important to overcome this change resistance. Next is participation and involvement. Always try to engage the stakeholders in making the decisions and in designing the change. This type of participation and involvement is going to minimize the type of resistance. Number 3 is facilitation and support. So always try to support the employees going through their journey of the change. So always ask them what is their feedback, how can I make it easier for you, how can I do the situation better for you, how can I make this affect your work in a minimum way. Number 4 is negotiation and agreement. And negotiation in agreement is really required whenever there is different perspectives. So if you think that you are proposing this type of change and you know that it's the best for the organization, however, the other party are against this type of change and they disagree with you, then always you need to negotiate and agree on one type of change that's going to help a smooth transition of the organization. Number 5 is manipulation and co-optation. So always try to find a way whereby you can motivate the people throughout this type of change. You can deal with them in a way where you can align their internal motivators with the organization purpose and vision. Number 6 is explicit and implicit coercion. So if none of those has worked, then you can use the power, for example, whenever is necessary. So you can set rules, regulations, you can link it to the salary, you can link it to promotion whenever people are very resistant to change. So what is culture and how does culture really relate to change? So we have, I think, talked about culture in many ways with the Patient Safety Center, because culture of safety is one of the main areas that we focus on. And culture is the ideas and the ways of working that are typically for an organization. So I think who would understand this very well are the people who worked in multiple organizations or different places. They can feel that these types and ways of working are really different from one place and another. And this really not only impacts the employees, it impacts how the employees behave, and it impacts every single outcome of the organization, including patient safety, patient experience, clinical outcome, and every other outcome in any healthcare system. So it's simply the way we do the things around here. So culture is what we see and the behaviors and attitudes of the organization and people. A culture change first happens in the people heads, and then in the represented, and then it's representative in the behaviors, and then it's demonstrated in the culture. And culture is very related to change management, because whenever we need to change a culture, and one of you have said in the comments that culture is very difficult to change, and we usually struggle to change it. Change management frameworks and models are very important to be implemented during trying to transform the culture. So we have many different types of change models. I'm going to try to explain them briefly. However, if you want to have further details, you can read more about them. You can have certificates in those subjects if you are interested. So I have classified them into two main categories. Some are organizational culture, and the organizational culture tackle the whole organization. And we will talk about Kurt Lewin and John Cutter, which has 8 steps. And then there is the personal change management model, which is EDCAR model, and it's a trademark of ProSci. And I've called it personal because EDCAR tackled every single person in the organization differently. So for example, they check the staff category and measure the way the change is going to be impacting the work activities of this staff category particularly, and identify which one is highly impacted by the change, and then tackle different types of staff differently, trying to transform them from the current status to the future status. I think that's what makes the difference between EDCAR and the other frameworks of change management. So let's look at Kurt Lewin. So Lewin, he's a social psychologist. He presented his model in the mid of 1940s. So it's been like a long time ago. He started to propose a change management model. And it was similar to this ICQ. He said, we have 3 phases. First of all, whenever we want to propose any change in the organization, we need to unfreeze this organization. Then we need to implement the change. The third step is to rephrase the organization after we have modified it on the current status. The next framework is John Cutter framework, and it has 8 steps. I'll go through them briefly, just to explain to you how every step can be implemented in the organization. The first 3 steps are about creating the climate for change, and the 4, 5, and 6 is about engaging and enabling the organization, while the last 2 steps are about implementing and sustaining for the change. So it's similar that the first three steps in the previous model is the unfreeze, and the middle three steps is about implementing the change, and the two steps that are in red is about rephrasing the change after implementing it. So it's very similar to the previous model, however, it's more extensive and detailed. So step one is by increasing the urgency. So Qatar said that the first step, we need to have this raised feeling of urgency, and it's the most critical step in successful change efforts. He said that slow urgency and complacency, the change effort cannot get off the ground. So if the people in the organization don't feel that really this is important and it's a high priority in the organization, they will not take it seriously. So what activities can we do to increase this type of urgency? We can create a accompanying story. So leaders can start to tell them accompanying story about the change and how we want to reach there and what is the future that we are looking up to. Next is never underestimate how much complacency, fear, and anger exist. So this type of acknowledgement of those complexities of the organization are really important. So it will help you to overcome it in the future. Third, try to create a vision. Step two is by building a guiding team. It's very important to start to build this guiding team by getting the right people in place who are really fully committed to the change. So try to select those people who are really adopting the change. They are well respected within the organization. People will start to listen to them. Those are influencers in the organizations. Those have power to drive the change, and try to make it at all levels. So you can have frontliners, leaders, people who are really respected and listened to by their peers and colleagues. So what would work in this situation? Showing the enthusiasm and the commitment to draw the right people into the ground and the group, also modeling the trust and the teamwork is needed in the group. So always try to have this spirit between the members that they can collaborate together. Step three is getting the vision right. So while creating a shared need and urgency for change, what might push people into the action is the vision. So if the leader doesn't have a clear vision and the vision is not really aligned with the organization, then people won't be able to transform to the new status. So what would work? Trying to see literally a possible future. So try to visualize the future. Try to show the employees what the future could be. So you can set a vision, for example, for patient safety, that we want to be a high reliable organization. We want to have a zero harm to the patients. So that can be your vision. My vision might be patient and family-centered care. I want to provide the best care for patients. So try to state the vision that is really easy, understood by everyone. It's clear and everybody can adopt it. And it can be articulated in 5 minutes or written up in 1 page. Step 4 is communicate for buy-in. So after you had this vision, now the leaders have to start to communicate their vision to get buy-in from all of the stakeholders. So communicate the vision to gain understanding and buy-in by sending a clear, credible, and heartfelt messages about the direction of change to prepare for following steps and getting people to act. So the next stage is going to be starting to implement the change. So here you need to have full buy-in. Develop a communication strategy. Try to put your communication plan, a very well detailed and structured. You can discuss that in meetings, you can send emails, you can link it to promotion, you can whatever do that will communicate this type of change to everyone in the organization. Keep it simple and heartfelt. Also speaking in anxieties, confusion, anger, and distrust. So try to face those people and start to speak to them. Don't ignore them. Try to communicate to them and get their buy-in. Step 5 is empower the people for action. So if you don't empower people to action, change will never happen. If the leader is always having a self-directed and a self-decision making, then without empowering the rest of the group, then no action will happen. So start to empower the people by removing the barriers to whom we want to assist in pushing the change effort, and also by inspire, promote optimism, and build the confidence around the change effort. Try to give short messages to inspire the people and tell them that we can make it, the change can really happen, and it's not difficult, it's not impossible. What would work in this situation is finding individuals with change experience who can really bolster the people's self-confidence by using we won, we can too, any slogan or a sentence that really can increase the spirit and the positive energy in the team. People has to believe that they can make the difference. If it's a patient safety, yes, we can improve patient safety. Yes, we can improve the incident reports. We can be a learning organization system. We can provide better care to our patients. Also by recognition and rewarding, always consider recognition and rewarding as an effective tool to drive change in the system. Also giving feedback that can help people make better decisions. Such an example of recognition and rewarding for patient safety, you can use a good catch, you can use a patient star, patient safety champion, or any other types of recognition. Step 6 is creating short-term wins, and in short-term wins, those will nourish the faith in the change efforts. Also emotionally will reward the hard workers, keeping critiques at bay and build the momentum. So by creating a quick wins, people will start to believe, well, this type of change is really working very well. We are in the right direction. We will hit our target. So by creating short-term wins and being honest with the feedback, progress is achieved and the people are inspired. So what would work in this situation? Early wins that come fast. So always tackle early wins and try to share those successful stories with everyone in the organizations. Make them visible and possible as much as possible, and include many people in those quick wins as much as possible. And make those wins really meaningful to others, and it really adds value to the people beliefs and to their meaning of the work that they do. Step 7, and this stage we will start to sustain the gain and try to hardwire the changes in the system. So we will not let up. So we have the quick wins, we have celebrated that. However, people will build on this momentum to make the vision a reality by keeping urgency up and eliminating unnecessary, exhausting work and not declaring victory prematurely. So people now need to continue at this type of change. They need to have this spirit still alive. Try to aggressively riding yourself of work that wears you down. Try to delegate now the task and the work related to the other people to them. Try to look constantly for ways to keep the urgency up. A great example here is the accreditation process. So whenever an organization is going for accreditation, usually the urgency is high, people can feel the spirit, the positive energy. Yes, we want to get the accreditation, we want to improve the quality of care. However, after the accreditation, all of the people would stop doing the same process, and people will have the spirit down, and the process might go sometimes to the previous before accreditation. So here you need to not to let up, try to keep this type of work, delegate those tasks to other leaders, and try to use new situations and opportunistically to launch the next wave of change. Number 8 and last step of John Cotter's is make the change stick in the organization. So make those processes that you have proposed, making them part of the culture, making them part of the system. And what might work in this situation is telling vivid stories about the new organization. You can tell people, how could you feel now we provide the care to the patients in comparison to the previous situation? Do you think we have improved? Help people to reflect on that and make it always absolutely sure that you have the continuity of behavior and results that help a new culture grow. So for example, if you have implemented the pressure injury improvement project and you have sustained the gain and you have achieved the target, think what can we improve next to make our patients safer and to improve the patient safety. Try to start another improvement project, start to keep the spirit and the staff, and don't let them have this type of inertia again and go back to their silos. So next we'll talk about the ATCAR model. And as I said, ATCAR is a trademark for ProSci, and it's a framework that is focusing mainly on individuals. And of course, the previous frameworks was in focusing on the people side of change. However, it was mainly tackling all of the organization. In EDCAR, it might tackle different staff differently. EDCAR is an acronym for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And in EDCAR, they propose that changes come in two dimensions, the organizational or project side of change and the people side of change. So like what we said, there is a human side of change and there is organization or project side of change. And they say that successful change is a result of both dimensions of change maturing simultaneously. So if we focus on people side only, we will not get the success. If we focus on the project side only, we will never achieve the target. We need to focus on both of them to have the desired outcome. And those 5 steps, I'll go through them elaborately on in the next slides. So we have awareness, and in awareness, we can say what is and isn't working in my organization. So we need to improve the level of awareness, and I'm going to explain it in more detail in the next slides. And desire, we try to communicate the benefits of the adoption of the new change. Also in knowledge, we need to start to build this type of experience and knowledge and technical skills in staff to adopt this type of change and implement it. And in ability, we try to train them more, start small, and give them, build their abilities and enable them to do the change. And then we will reinforce the change and sustain the gain. The EDCAR model is useful in few ways. First of all, in diagnosing the employee resistant to change. So if we have certain category of staff who is really resistant to change, EDCAR would help us in diagnose which staff category is really resistant to change and how can we overcome it, because they have tools to decide at which level this staff is really failing. So maybe we have done the awareness, maybe we need to build the desire for this type of staff to have this willingness to go through this change. Next, it will help employees to transit through this change process, and it will help us to create a successful action plan for personal and professional advancement during a change initiative, and also in developing a change management plan for the employees. So what is awareness? Awareness, if the organization implements the new software, for example, if we're reflecting on a software as a change, then the employees are not aware that any changes are needed, and their action might be, this is a waste of my time, it was working just fine before, and they never tell us what's going on. So let's reflect this framework on implementation of a software. And if we fail at awareness, it means we did not spread this knowledge in the organization that we are implementing the software and what is the need and why we are implementing the software. And explaining the why is very important in the awareness phase. And if you heard previously about Simon Sinek, he's an author of multiple books about leadership and change management. And he said that the most important question to answer in any change initiative is the why. And he had his golden circle, and he said that the why is the core of this circle. So it's not important to explain what, not important to explain how, but it's very important to explain why. So people might think that's a waste of time if they don't know what's the importance of it. They might think that the system was working just fine before the improvement, and they might say they will never tell us that we are going to do this. And if you hear those questions in an organization, understand that this organization has failed at the awareness level. And then you need to focus more on awareing the staff about the type of change. The next is, of course, continuing with the EDCAR model, one of the natural human reactions to change, even in the best circumstances, is to resist. So awareness of the business organization is needed to change is a critical component to overcome this resistance. So always start by awareness because it would help to overcome this resistance. So if the employee clearly understands what's the old software version, why it's not working very well, and why we need to change it, what is the problem behind it, they would accept and they would start to build the desire to go throughout the change. So you need to answer their question, how soon will this happen? How will this impact me and my work and daily activity? And how will I receive my new training? So all of this, make it part of your awareness plan. Next step is to build the desire. And to build the desire, usually, as Carr says, that usually change initiatives fail at building the desire. And you can hear in the organization, if you think that the organization haven't invested in building the desire of the staff might say, I'm not interested in this change. What's in it for me in this change? And they might say, I doubt really that they are really seriously about this change. Are they seriously going to change the structure of the organization? Are they seriously going to implement this software? So if you hear this talks in the organization and those types of conversations, then believe it or not, that organization have failed in building a good desire of the change. And the best person to help to resist employee in their direct is usually to help to improve the desire and build it in the organization is the direct manager or supervisor. It's not the CEO of the organization, it's not the quality director, it's not any type of person, whether working in the organization or outside the organization, is the direct manager and supervisor. So engaging the leaders at any level, including direct manager and supervisors, is very important for a safe transition and building desire in the organization. And those people usually are closely related to the employees. Usually they are people who do the evaluation for the employees. They are who are signing their contract, signing their leaves. So those will be able to translate and build the desire in those employees. The third step is the knowledge. And only after building the awareness and the desire, then we need to start to provide the organization with detailed knowledge of how to use the new software or how to implement the new process or how to use the new form. So unfortunately, what happens, organizations commonly see a change coming, and the first step they take is to send employees to training. So whenever we propose a change, usually we don't explain why, we don't try to build the desire. Yalla, let's train the employees on the new change. Let's do a lecture. Let's start educating them about it. The result of this approach is that the training is not highly effective. The employees are not engaged in the detailed functionality of the software because they are not prepared to learn, and they may not even know why they are even implementing this thing, and they will not adopt it. They might do it for a short period of time, and then the compliance is going to be really low for this new software. Next, after building the knowledge, is building the ability. So now people have the knowledge, but they need to practice to have this ability and skill. So after helping employees to gain their intellectual understanding of how to navigate in the software interface, there may still be a gap between the knowledge and the ability. So remember, now we need them to practice a new software. They need to be able to use a new machine, to implement a new process that they did not do before. Building the knowledge or giving them a lecture, a scientific lecture, is not enough to build their ability. Always consider the skills that they need to practice and try to train them very well in that. Demonstrate the ability to work with the software in a live, real-world situation. Take them to a simulation center, take them in a computer lab and let them practice this for enough working hours, and then they would be able to do it. If employee really have the knowledge, but they don't have the ability, the talks that you might hear in the organization, the employee would say, I'm not getting these new steps right. I don't know how to implement this new process. I eventually get there, but it takes me twice as long. I've heard this, by the way, this sentence many ways when we implement a new software. Physicians, many times, they struggle using a new software, and they spend too long time doing an electronic prescription, using a new software, just because we haven't built their ability to, in a proper way, to be able to use it. Also, you can hear, I understand the manual, but when I have to do it, I just freeze and I can't really implement it in the right way. The last but not least step in the ATCAR model is reinforcement. So reinforcement is the final element of the ATCAR model, and it's the human brain is wired for habits. So now we have built the knowledge, we have built the skill. Now we need to make it as a behavior and habit for the people. So people will start to behave, and here we can change the culture, we can improve the compliance, we can sustain the gain and make this type of change integrated with the organization and culture. So we are physiologically programmed to revert to our old habits. That is why we need the reinforcement. People will get back to the old way and the way that they used to do the things unless we hardwire it and we reinforce the change. When reinforcement is not in place, we see employees using workarounds. For example, they use this system for a short period of time and then they use the old spreadsheets instead of the old software whenever they don't have time, whenever they are running with so many patients, with certain type of staff. So, and this stage, if we don't have this type of compliance or the amount of compliance that we expect, then we are failing at the reinforcement. And we can hear the new way just takes too long, or I'm going to keep doing it that way. I keep forgetting to include the new departments. So for that, we need to focus on reinforcement. And this is the end of our lecture. At last, I would like to say one quote, that progress is impossible without change. And those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. ولا يغير الله ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. So change always have to start from the inside. We need to start to believe that we can make the change. We really want to change, and then we can change ourselves first, and then lead the organization toward the change. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Nuha, for the very nice presentation and addressing this interesting topic. And of course, all of us need change in our workplace, and especially in healthcare organizations. Dear participants, kindly post your questions and answers in order to allow our speaker for today, Dr. Nuha, to answer all of your questions. Dr. Nuha, there is a question from Ala. How can we manage the short wins? Sometimes a hard worker in the night duty will make mistake, neglected. I love to reward staff, but afraid that I do not have the whole picture.
Thank you, Dr. Dalia. Thank you, Ala, for your question. I understand that you're talking about kind of understanding the performance of the staff at different type of shifts. So first of all, you need to define what is your quick win is. What is the type of achievement that you want to drive the change toward? After defining that, you need to measure it. And to measure it, you need to set KPI. So you need to put your key performance indicators, and based on that, try to measure the performance of the staff accordingly. And if the staff are going at different shifts, then you can monitor their performance by different ways. So the manager at the night shift can monitor the performance and evaluate them. You can evaluate them by file review, by conducting peer-to-peer review. So there are many ways to monitor the performance of the staff at different shifts. However, your evaluation has to be, first of all, aligned with the short win by defining what is the win or what is the target that you want to achieve, what is your goal. And then by setting a KPI and know exactly who is reaching the targets, and then you will reward those type of staff.
The second question is a new EHR system implementation considered an input change or process change? Is there a way of differentiating between inputs and process in situations like EHR? Can be considered both input and process?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. So implementing a new electronic system or electronic health record is a change in structure, because we would need multiple computers. We would need maybe internet, we would need electronic system, software, we would need many structure. So absolutely, it's a change in structure. But usually the structure comes in the planning phase. And that during the implementation phase, it's a process. So using the electronic healthcare record is a process that every single doctor or nurse or whoever using the electronic healthcare system are going to implement anyways. So it's a process, and as it's a new change as a process, it would absolutely require people management of change at the people side. So it requires change management. So it's a process and structure, and it would impact the work, the people, how the people do the work, and it would require absolutely a change management.
Okay, can we consider building knowledge is considered a low impact action in the action hierarchy? And what is considered strong action?
Okay, so thank you so much for the question. Building knowledge is not a weak action, but it's not the first step to start with. So like what I said, in EDCAR model, we need to start first of all with awareness. So before we start to build the knowledge, we need to make people aware that there is a change. What happens in most organizations, people are not aware of the change. They don't know that there is a transformation. They don't know what is the plan of the future. The vision is not transferred to them. It's not translated to their department and areas. And if there is no awareness and we didn't build the desire, then building the knowledge is going to be a very weak tool to use. So building knowledge is an effective tool if it comes in the right place, the right sequence, and then continue by building abilities for people to perform the change.
Dr. Nuha, would you please allow me to add a point here also?
Absolutely, Dr. Dalia.
Yeah, using technology, forcing functions such as hard stop, soft stops, it could be considered as a stronger change in the organization. And when we arrange it as a healthcare provider in the hierarchy of change, yes, education will be a little bit lower than the technology and the hard stop, soft stops.
Absolutely agree with you, Dr. Dalia. It's very important point to highlight that whenever we can minimize the human intervention, particularly in patient care, it's going to minimize the human error, because again, we have the human error factors. So even if people have the knowledge and the ability and they really have the desire to do the changes, there is a human factor and people might miss and they might do mistakes. So minimizing this type of human intervention as much as possible by doing electronic system or any type of changes that's going to minimize the human factor is really important for patient safety. Can't agree more.
Thank you, Doctora. Okay, is it possible to predict all effects of change? And how can we improve our predictions?
Okay, so it's very difficult to predict all effects of change, but how can we improve it is by trying to measure the progress of change in the organization and trying to get a continuous feedback from the staff. For example, again, I'll get to ProSci and EDCAR. In EDCAR, we can see that we measure, first of all, we do assessment for the organization, and then again, we need to do reassessment of the organization. And this frequent reassessment of the organization will help us to understand where are we now and how can we really tackle the change in the right way, in the right direction.
Okay, Rakan asking, so in planning for change, we have to consider how the change will affect other systems. In my organization, what type of system I need to consider to plan my change?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rakan. I do agree with you. And if you are aware of some of the principles of quality improvement, whenever we do a quality improvement project, and a quality improvement project is one type of the changes that we implement in an organization, usually we develop process measures, outcome measures, and we have what's called a balancing measure. And a balancing measure usually measures that whatever we are trying to change or improve is not really resulting in a negative outcome in the organization. And by that, we try to measure what could be a negative outcome that might have resulted from a positive type of improvement project. using a balancing measure. So again, try always to use a KPI to understand how your system is performing whenever you are implementing a new change. Because like what you said, the change might not result in the desired outcome that we want, or it might have some negative consequences that we did not expect.
Okay, we'll take this question. How important awareness regarding a change, like climate change?
Wonderful. So awareness is very important. So climate change, for example, is one of the changes that's happening globally, and then we need to do awareness for the community about it. Whatever is the subject that we want to increase the level of awareness in the community about, it's really important. And like I said, it's the first step in driving any change. For example, if you want to transform to green energy, and green energy transformation is one of the pillars of the vision, then how can we increase, how can we improve this type of change in the community? Then the first step to do is to increase the level of awareness in the community about the need of green energy use, the side effects of the carbon emission types of use. Like the climate changes, awareness is really important, and it's the first step in any change management.
Okay. In your organization, are there difficult people? How long you convince them to accept change?
So thank you so much, Honorina, for the question. I think everywhere there are people who are resistant to change, and I won't call them difficult people, because if we understand the people in the right way, they won't resist the change. I would call them people who are resistant to change. And believe me, I've been facing people who were very resistant to change, and trying to, first of all, starting by building the awareness, telling them why are you doing the change and what does it really matter in this change. And if you link it to a patient-centeredness, if you link it to patient safety, if you try to build the desire in any person, even if a difficult person, like what you call them or label them, so those people are really going to be convinced, and they will be an advocate to the change. So believe it or not, there are no difficult people. There are people who are resistant to change, and usually we are the people who create those resistance to change.
And I would like to add that we need to involve people, and you will gain their trust, you will gain their opinion, inshallah. And there is again a question. It's very difficult to make them understand, and many resist change and do not accept. How to bring change in them?
Okay, I'm going to get back to one of the slides, because many of the questions are about
Involvement.
Exactly. So people can take picture of this slide if they want. And it has the reference, so you can get back to the reference and read more about this subject. So here I've talked about the reasons behind resistance to change. So part of it is the self-interest. People would have different self-interest, so they think that they will lose something in this change. And here we need to convince them that they will not lose anything with this type of change. Part of it is misunderstanding and lack of trust, and part of it is different assessment of the situation, like different perspectives, and also low tolerance to change and inertia. How to overcome it? Here, there are 6 ways you can overcome change with it, 6 approaches developed by John Cutter. And it says, first one is education and communication, participation and involvement, and that's what you are highlighting, Dr. Adali, and I totally agree with you. Participation and involvement is really important. Number 3 is facilitation and support people during transition to the change. Also negotiation and agreement, always discuss it, always make it an area that we can talk with people about. Don't make it an area that nobody can discuss it or argue about it. Also, you can manipulate or co-optation, also explicit and implicit coercion if required.
Okay, how leaders can be more transparent about the change they want to bring in?
Excellent question. So how people can be transparent? I think the best way is by being transparent about the vision, by communicating the vision in every situation and trying to make it cascading throughout the system, reaching the frontliners by telling stories. So when leaders are telling stories, whenever they have the ability to share those stories, whether a comparison with other organizations, whether stories of the current situation and how we look up to in the future. Also by having this leadership presence and availability to meet the frontliners and staff and trying to engage them and talk to them about the problem. So leaders has to talk and walk in the organization to be able to transfer this type of change.
This last questions. Good
Okay.
question. Social media has been a big impact in information dissemination. It is part of huge change in our society. What can you advise to us in dealing information in social media?
It's a wonderful question. Talking about social media is going to take a very long time to talk about it and how it might impact the organization in many ways. So part of it, it might be part of the customer journey. So part of the customer journey is interacting with this social media. So people can hear about your organization by just reading about your Twitter account or looking into Google reviews about the organization. However, if you are trying to tackle community awareness, or trying to increase the level about the need of change or the importance of change, or increase the level of knowledge in the community, then social media is really a very good and effective tool, and it's used by everyone at the current state. I think it can be used and utilized in a very positive way in multiple ways. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, by that, we will end up our webinar. And on behalf of Saudi Patient Safety Center, we would like to thank Dr. Nuha Al-Muhaysin and the audience for the active participation with this topic. And I think it's very essential to understand about this topic. The world is accelerating and we are going fast in the change. As a part of the Saudi Patient Safety Center efforts to provide you with a timely topic and interesting speakers, we would appreciate if you would fill out the evaluation survey provided at the end of the session. And thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to welcoming you back in future webinars. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dalia, and thank you all for the people who attended with us today. I hope it was an informative lecture. I would like to thank also the Patient Safety Center for coordinating and those type of activities that they are trying to do for the community. And thank you so much all.